Hey everybody, welcome to another video, and I apologize once again for not being on camera. Still some technical difficulties on that front, but regardless of that, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a book that I just finished, and it's not really a review as much as it's just sort of a retrospective. You'll notice a review won't be in the title because there's not a lot I can say in the ways of positive or negative criticism. So this time we're talking about Batman Chronicles Volume 1. And this is essentially a reprinting in full color of Detective Comics 27 through 38, which are the first, I want to say, 11 issues of Batman, and then Batman number 1, which is a pretty long issue that contains 4 short stories. So this is essentially the first appearances of Batman all the way through, and as the Chronicles line tends to do and wants to collect all of Batman's comics in exact chronological order. And part of why I prefer this format to any other reprintings like the 30s through the 70s or the 1930s or 40s omnibuses or anything in that vein is I think it actually looks better in color than it does in black and white. The Showcase Presents books does everything in black and white, and there are certain things here and there that do honestly look better there, since they're able to do some more noir things. But something about getting the original color and the original artwork the way it was meant to be, including its errors and stuff, is just historically fascinating. And that's kind of why I want to talk about this, and not make it a review, because it's just historically fascinating. There are several tenets to Batman mythology that everyone knows, or something that seems fairly consistent and something that we almost take for granted at this point. Batman's a bit of a loner, he doesn't kill, he lives in Gotham City, things in that vein. The Joker is insane and laughs a lot, and we act like this is just all inherently there, and even if we know better, it's hard to get away from the feeling that this is just how it always is. And in all honesty, that's not how it is, and it's really strange to go back in time and see how all of this first developed, and you can almost see the editorial politics being played out as these issues go on. So the first thing I want to talk about is Detective 27, and I'm not going to go issue by issue to this because there's just not a lot of meat to these stories, but I will mention the interesting bits. So Detective 27, the first Batman comic, and for these first couple issues up until the Mad Monk story, it's Bat-Man, and he's got the great Year One costume that I love, with the purple gloves and the widespread ears and almost the kind of dollar bin sort of look to him. And he loses that fairly quickly, which I'm not crazy about. I kind of wish we stuck around with that costume a little bit longer. I think that original design with the spread out ears and the smaller bat and the almost glider-esque cape actually looks a lot better than what we would get just a few issues later with the heavy blue, the much lighter cape and the much closer together symmetrical ears. But yeah, it's a very interesting costume. It's something that has definitely permeated every time we do a Year One Batman story. We kind of have to do the purple glove look now just because it seems kind of classic. And here it's played up as this is a weird and freaky Avenger of the Night. It opens with Bruce Wayne's best friends with Commissioner Gordon, and he tells him about cases, and all of this is very mystery-driven. And as you go through and you read these stories, you discover that the formula is essentially that some sort of crime activities going on, either mafia-related or jewel heist or bank robbery or whatever. Batman tracks it down after it's happened and just sort of solves a mystery, and it's usually not the most complicated mysteries, though they're fun. And part of why it's okay that they're not that complicated is that they're barely 10 pages long. They range from like 4 to 10 page stories, so it's not like you're sitting there for 22 pages reading something that you've seen done a million times over. It's enjoyable in that way. And then every now and then there are some surprisingly good twists. Like there's actually a vampire story in here, and that's interesting. The other thing I want to mention is Bruce Wayne for these early issues, and it continues in a little bit later when we get to the next Batman Chronicles volume. Bruce Wayne's got a fiance, and she's actually my favorite Batman love interest. She's not in a lot of books, but a couple of the issues here, the one about the Monster Men and the one about the Mad Monk, are retold much later by Matt Wagner, and she makes an appearance in those stories, in the retellings as well, and she also makes an appearance at the end of Zero Year. So Batman's fiancée is Julie Madison, and she doesn't get a lot of development here. She's just kind of fiancée to Batman, and we don't really develop her or anything, or where that relationship comes from, or what these two people do together, or anything like that. We just have to give him a love interest for the sake of it. But it's interesting that that's where it starts. Also, interestingly, Batman's not in Gotham City. Gotham City is actually something that comes a little bit later. I want to say in Batman issue 3 or 4, so it's not in this first wave. And the story behind that is really that in New York City, a lot of things are nicknamed Gotham. So you will see things like Gotham Jewelry Store in New York. So Batman lives in New York here in this story. But there are offhanded mentions of things being Gotham just because that's the slang of the area for the time period. And it's only later pulled out of that and just turned into a full-on city. Which, again, historically speaking, is kind of interesting, because now if you try to convince anyone to make a Batman story not set in Gotham, it would seem ridiculous to them. Other thing that I think most people know at this point is that Batman does kill, and I was a little bit surprised going back into this and seeing the way in which he kills, because we get for these first few issues, Batman just gets into fistfights with people, and he punches someone, and they kind of stumble back and fall off a building, or fall into a vat of acid, or get hit by a car, or it's almost played up as, well, if you didn't try to mess with Batman, you probably wouldn't have ended up dead, and it's kind of your own fault, even though Batman pushed you into the situation. And it's kind of just played as, oh, well, Batman didn't want to do it, but it was kind of unavoidable. And then you get other things, and this is the disturbing one. So the Monster Men story, which is part of Batman #1, and is retold later by Matt Wagner, is the second appearance of Hugo Strange, which, by the way, the Hugo Strange is the first Batman supervillain to appear, at least the way this book reads in chronological order. And the Monster Men story has Batman doing things like setting two people up to beat each other to death, like that's his plan, and him flying over a Monster Man with a noose and dragging him into the sky until he chokes him to death. Yeah, that kind of stuff is just a bit disturbing. And it doesn't gel with the rest of it. It's not even lacking historical perspective, but when you read that issue, in relation to the stuff that comes before, Batman's almost kind of psychotic. And he's not played that way earlier. He's played like he's just a rough and tumble detective. But to just full on be a manipulator like that is kind of strange. Batman is also very Sherlock Holmes in this. So again, that particular issue feels a little bit out of character. But Batman's very Sherlock Holmes in most of this. And so when you get the first appearance of the Joker in Batman #1, you have an opening story with the Joker and you have an ending story with the Joker. The Joker's played like Moriarty. The Joker is played like he's the physical equal of Batman, the mental equal of Batman, and there's a lot of stuff here that Christopher Nolan drew on for The Dark Knight. Things like Joker disguising himself as a police officer, announcing his kills beforehand, making things about chaos, using explosives to get out of a jail cell that he wanted to get captured in, stuff like that. So there's a lot of similarities between the Joker and Batman, or Joker and The Dark Knight, and that's interesting. The Joker here is not an insane jester. He's a very serious, genius, intellect level guy, and he's very disturbed. He's got very much a mastermind kind of personality, and I find that endlessly fascinating because he's got that grin on his face all the time, but he doesn't laugh very much. He laughs at his own death because he supposedly dies at the end of this, and then the big cliffhanger is, oh my god, he might not be dead. But he gets stabbed through the chest, and he laughs, and he's happy that the clown is dead, and there's an interesting psychological angle to that, and they don't develop it very much, but it's almost like the Joker's very much a Deadshot in that his institution of chaos must always culminate in his end, and that's kind of fascinating. And it's kind of ironic that going forward, the Joker and Batman are characters that are seen as mythologically are beings that can never die. And you get that more literally in stuff like Grant Morrison's work. But it's really ironic that they start as such mortal beings here. The only other thing I think I want to mention here is you get Robin, and I was expecting the Robin's first issue to be you get the same kind of Bruce Wayne style, one page in origin, and then you just do team-ups. And it's not that. It's actually an entire issue devoted to the origin of Robin. And it hasn't changed very much at all since its inception. Tony Zuko asks for protection money, Haley Sergis doesn't give it to him, so they sabotage the ropes, Dick Grayson's parents die, Batman takes him under his wing and trains him, and he captures Tony Zuko later down the line and decides to join Batman as his permanent partner, Robin. Although they do play up from the very beginning that Robin comes from a spirit of Robin Hood, so that's kind of cool. They don't do the thing that would happen later where Robin was the nickname that his mother gave him or anything like that. Which is interesting. Robin's played very much as the young high-flying daredevil, the swashbuckler, the Zorro to Batman's Shadow, and that's kind of interesting that you would team those two characters together, considering how pulpy this is. This whole story is written as. These early issues feel very much like they would be bookended with the Shadow's monologues about what fear lurks in the hearts of men. And then you throw Robin in there, and it feels like, from his perspective, it should always end with the Sheriff of Nottingham dropping his pants and Robin Hood flying away into the forest. It's a really weird juxtaposition, but it totally works, and it's really interesting. Contrary to popular belief, the introduction of Robin does not make Batman simply give up killing, because the introduction of Robin happens, and then Batman #1 comes out. And in Batman #1 is where we get that Monster Men story, where Batman is just psychopathically killing people. Although Robin is not in that particular story. The whole Batman comics cannot have characters die anymore, or Batman killing people would come a little bit after this. But it's not here just yet, and Robin's role is just a little bit different from the beginning, and it's really just there to give Batman someone to talk to, because it starts as Batman just exposits to Commissioner Gordon, and now it becomes Batman is training Robin along as he goes along. Overall, this is a really interesting read, especially if you're someone that reads a lot of Batman, but they only read stuff like 70s or 80s forward. I'd really recommend going back and checking this out. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to buy the showcases. You don't have to buy the Batman through the 30s to the 70s trade. You don't have to buy any other Chronicles. Just look into Batman Chronicles Volume 1 by itself. Just the first 10 issues of Detective and Batman #1. Just as the origin of the character. And that's enough to give you a sufficient understanding of the differences and the evolution the character has gone through, and it might give you a little bit of a better perspective on why he's evolved in certain ways, because there are things that are inherently there. The whole weird figure of darkness, the whole urban myth idea that people really latch on to, the fact that Batman and Joker are always played as polar opposites, that there's always a element of theatricality to what Batman's doing. Those elements there are there inherently. And then you get stuff like Robin always being the jokey one. Robin being the sort of not only the Watson to Batman Sherlock Holmes, but being the polar opposite of him in a good way. And all that's there, but then you get other stuff like Batman's got a social life, Bruce Wayne's got a fiance, and Bruce Wayne kills people, and he's very much more of a curious detective than he is anything else. He's not vengeful, he's not spiteful, he looks like he's actually pretty well adjusted, and this is just kind of there as a Sherlock Holmes-esque boredom or curiosity. There's not really a birth of a drive the moment his parents die. He makes the vow and he becomes Batman and trains for 15 years to do what he does, but he's never broody, and that's immediately interesting. So yeah, if you haven't read this, or if you've read Batman comics before and you have an idea or a sense of who your Batman is, I'd still recommend going back and checking this out, just for the interesting differences. Again, you don't have to go through the next Chronicle volumes. You don't have to go to the showcases. You don't have to read any further than this. If you're someone that just can't stand the way the campiness that this would eventually become, then that's fine. But if nothing else, just read these first 10 issues. And I say all of these issues because one of them is not enough to give you a sense of what this character is. There's a very solid growth here over these very particular issues, and so you have to read them collectively to get an idea of what this first year of Bill Finger, Bob Kane comics are. You'll notice I didn't go in and talk too much about the creator controversy about who made the Joker and who made Robin and who made Batman, and that whole Jerry Robinson, Bob Kane, Bill Finger dispute. Mostly because I don't have a lot to add to the conversation. Bill Finger did most of the work for this character. He deserves some credit, if not all the credit. It's terrible that what Bob Kane did. I won't pass any judgment on him as a person or Bill Finger as a person or what they could have done. Read up on the case if you guys can, just to get a better sense of what's really going on, because it is a complicated story, and I don't want to taint the subject of analyzing Batman past and present with the creator disputes, because that kind of stuff does actually get me really annoyed when you think about how popular this character becomes and how the person who really created him doesn't get any credit. All that aside, just the content of the story, it's an interesting read. It's a very quick read. The prose style is great. The artwork is great. And it's just a good way to get historical perspective. If you can't bring yourself to read the goofiness of like Stan Lee style comics, I think you'll be able to more readily stomach this. So yeah, if you guys have read it, or if you have any questions, or if you have any disagreements, or something I didn't mention, let me know and leave it in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Until next time, I'm not sure what I'll be reviewing next, but I will be sure to let you know. But I'll see you guys next time, and comment any thoughts you guys have on this book or on any other subjects or any recommendations or anything of that nature. But I will see you.